maybe part of the meta crisis is our inability to like put a perspective on it, get a perspective on it. Yeah, maybe it's a collection of perspectives. Who knows? Where is it? In this room? In us? We don't know. Anyway, we're going to find out if it even matters to have the term and why. So, like I said, we have 4 speakers lined up. Each going to present 10 minutes of their perspective on how they perceive it. Yeah, and for me personally, I think I hope it can come alive in you, in your imagination. So to get a sense of for the second part when we actually go down into it, or what it is to you personally. So let's just start. First speaker is Julyan Davey. Maybe come up here, Julyan. Already. Yes. Julyan is also part of the Emerge London team here. He's also helping to make this happen and has done so. So the first, let me give him an introduction. Like, so yeah, Julyan is a young philosopher, I would say. He's also a spiritual seeker as well as a gifted writer and active in Extinction Rebellion. So where he's focused on conflict resolution and the decentralized organization of Extinction Rebellion. So I mean, as you probably know, it's not very easy to organize a rebellion, so we need much of that. So yeah, I think we need meta activists like Julyan. It's actually great, and I'm really happy that people like him are actually making a huge sacrifice, to do that, to spend so much time working on this. I mean, the guy is like super smart, and he could be successful in making any career work for him, but yeah, he's not doing that right now. He's doing stuff that actually is more important, and so give it up for him.
Hi everyone, my name's Julyan, and as I was said, I work for XR in the Transformative Conflicts and Justice Systems team. Bit of a mouthful, but over the last few years I've been exploring philosophically, like deeper and deeper into our society and culture to try and understand something about the mess that we're in and how we got here. So I've been writing and podcasting on a publication called The Phoenix Project, which I do with my friend Will, who's in the middle there. We have a thing where we have this collaboration, and we have what's called a di-vigil, which means there's a whole person, which is like our combination, and she's called Sophie, so big it up for Sophie. So the Phoenix Project, the Phoenix is our metaphor for the better world that our hearts know is possible, that we hope rises out of the ashes of our collapsing civilization. So I like to think of humanity's current predicament as that of a tightrope walker, and an inexperienced one at that. We're teetering on a rope above a deep canyon, walking a narrow path between ruin and a better world. Either we get to a completely different way of organizing society and living together, or our civilization comes to an end. This time, there is really no alternative. If we don't make the transition from an industrial society committed to economic growth to a life-sustaining society committed to the healing and restoration of our world, then we will fall into the abyss, and it will mean, at best, the deaths of billions of sentient beings, and at worst, the end of life on Earth. Don't slip, humanity, on the tightrope. Keep your balance. One false move, and it's all over. Maybe forever. Some astronomers have even hypothesized that the reason we haven't yet encountered alien life, which is called the Fermi paradox, is because all intelligent species inevitably face these challenges that we're facing at the moment. And most of them fail, and they don't live to tell the tale. So the abyss under our tightrope is littered with the corpses of tightrope walking civilizations that slipped and fell. But what has put us on this tightrope? We can point to so many crises in our world today. There's a climate and ecological emergency, that threatens all life on Earth. There are algorithms and exponential technology that we don't have the sense to use wisely. There's a political crisis that has led to deep distrust in our institutions of democracy and the rise of fascism around the world. We've got a mental health crisis where depression, anxiety and addiction are rampant and rising. And that's all fed by a meaning crisis, which is the problem of finding meaning in our post-death of God world. And we've got an economic crisis where the 8 richest men own more than 3.6 billion people. And we're finding it more and more difficult to improve the lives of people around the world. And these crises, they say nothing about the interlayered and intersecting oppressions of our society, of gender, race and class. And I think these should also be considered as crises in themselves, because if we can't bridge our divisions, then we're not going to be able to make the movements that we need to bring about a better world. So it's very easy to think of these crises as separate and independent, and to spend our whole lives as activists and change makers just trying to make a difference, just to one of them. And often we end up just patching the byproducts of these crises, rather than going after their root causes. For example, we patch by sending aid to Africa, when the entire global economic system is set up to allow our exploitation of that continent. We also end up spending a good chunk of our time in competition for time and resources, arguing with each other about why our crisis is much more important than the others. This is why the idea of the meta-crisis is so important. By finding what underlies all these crises and puts us onto that tightrope, we can target our efforts at the deepest root causes of our societal issues. It also becomes clear that all of our efforts to change the world are interwoven and interdependent. So the meta-crisis is an example of what Timothy Morton has called a hyper-object, which means you can't see it in the world, it's not in this bar, but it seeps and permeates into all aspects of our life. And it's not something that we can capture with just one perspective. There's this parable of the blind men and the elephant, where you've got 5 blind men, and they're all touching an elephant, trying to understand what it is. One of them's got the horn, and one of them's touching the body, and they think elephants are completely different things. And that's what the meta-crisis is like. People think it's completely different. So in the rest of this talk, I want to give you one perspective, my perspective, on the meta-crisis that I think is particularly compelling. Now this might sound like hyperbole, but I want to argue that what underlies and ties these crises together is a system, culture and way of being that is in opposition to life itself. Normally, life makes the conditions for more life. But at the moment, the dominant human systems and culture do quite the opposite. They destroy the conditions for other life to exist and for real human flourishing and creativity. But why? One answer can be found in the growing field of complex system science. So life, which is a form of complexity, emerges when there is balance in a system between efficiency, hierarchy and order on one hand, and adaptivity, resilience and chaos on the other. And this discovery of modern science eerily parallels the concepts of yin and yang of Eastern philosophy, and also the dichotomy between Apollo and Dionysus, which is something that Nietzsche talked about. So, in all aspects of our life, in the last 10,000 years or more, we've swung wildly away from the conditions that support more life, which would be a harmonious balance between these two forces. And they swung towards more order, more structure, more hierarchy, and more efficiency. And I see that as being across all of our reality. It's like everywhere you look, we've moved away from like the place of creativity and growth and life. And where can we look to see how to get this balance? So nature already has this balance, which has allowed life to flourish. And by moving the human part of nature, because we are part of nature, away from that balance, we are causing untold damage to the system that supports us. So this is why the field of biomimicry is so important. But I like to call it bioharmony, because we're not separate from nature, we just need to reharmonize with nature. So how does nature achieve this? It achieves it through diversity, in terms of all of the different forms of life that exist, but also in terms of nature's cycles. That's how nature gets the balance between order and chaos, or efficiency and activity. Hope this is making sense. And once you cotton onto this distinction, you start to see this lack of diversity and this imbalance in all aspects of our consensus reality. Like, walk down the street, you can see it everywhere. We are wildly out of balance. And now I'm going to give you a few examples. So we can see this imbalance in the culture and philosophy of our society, where one way of knowing, logical rationality, has come to dominate. So it's crowded out all of the alternatives. And one story of separation, materialism, individualism, free markets and consumerism has come to dominate our cultural matrix. And this imbalance can be seen in our very brains, whose relentless, unchanging thought patterns lead us to depression and anxiety. And we can rescue them by chaos-inducing psychedelics and meditation. This imbalance can be seen in our economy, where capitalism values efficiency at all costs, and money is placed as the only source of value in life at the expense of all others. And we can see it in the organizations of our society, which value the efficiency of top-down hierarchy over self-managing adaptivity. And we can see it in our oppressive social systems, where one mode of experience, that of the white Western European man, is held aloft above all others. The patriarchy is an example of how a particular way of being a man, which corresponds to this, dominant, hierarchical, action-orientated, has come to dominate. And it's come to dominate so much so that most of our solutions for fighting gender equality focus on how women can act more in this mold, rather than truly correcting the dynamic. So that's just a few examples, but I think there are hundreds of more when you start looking. This pattern repeats itself everywhere you look. And I'm now going to give you an example of a nightmare that I had after reading some Charles Eisenstein. And I think this sums up the point really. Which is, he talks about a concrete world, which is a world where all of the complexity and beauty around us has been converted into complicated but highly ordered human machines. So we replace trees, which are these beautiful, complex beings, with human, ordered, complicated machines, like a car. It just sort of does things. Do this, press the button, it goes. Whereas a tree, it's constantly adapting to its environment and constantly shifting all the time. And in this dream, we replace rivers with metal pipes, and we geoengineer the atmosphere. And this is really a nightmare for me, because it seems like this is already in our world that we live in today. We already live, to some extent, in this reality where our lives are really out of balance. So I want to come back to the idea of the meta-crisis, because that was a bit of a crazy tangent. Hope maybe lost you all there. So why is the meta-crisis important? It's important because it can help to bring balance back to our civilization. Because when we see the meta-crisis, and I've just given you one perspective on it, invades all aspects of our life, all aspects of our life become avenues and opportunities for change. It's not just activist work or voting. It's every part of your life can be a way where you can bring balance back to the force. We can bring together our inner spiritual and emotional development, our activist work to fight the present system, our construction of a more harmonious system, and our creation of new life-affirming cultures into one united, pro-life, that's what I'm calling it, movement. I know it's been done before. To do battle with our life-phobic society and get us balancing our way across that tightrope. Thank you, everyone.